They say your job shouldn't define who you are, but when you're a single mother piecing her life back together from scratch, it often feels like there's no other option. My name's Claire Harper. I'm 39, and up until last week, I held the position of Senior Project Strategist at Carson Blake, a fast-rising consultancy in Chicago. I was also the architect behind the strategy that secured the monumental $20 million Falkner Industries contract, the biggest
Yet
win in
none
the
of that
firm's
is reflected
history.
in my HR file.
That's just how the game is played. My boss smirked as he slid a thick stack of termination papers across the polished oak desk. "Don't take it personally," he said, brushing it off as a routine restructuring. I called it a betrayal. The moment felt surreal, almost like I was standing outside of myself. The room was heavy with the stale scent of old coffee mixed with overpriced cologne. The hum of the AC buzzed too loud for a cold February morning. I stared at the paperwork, heart hammering in my chest. After 5 years of pulling all-nighters, juggling deadlines, missing family holidays, and recitals for my daughter Ellie, I was now being discarded like a worn-out office chair. Effective immediately. "I'm sorry, Claire," he added with a shrug that said otherwise, not even bothering to make eye contact. "We're moving in a new direction. Fresh voices, fresh energy. You get it." No, I didn't get it. Not after pouring everything I had into this place. "Just breathe," I told myself, lifting my chin to keep the tears at bay. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me crack. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said in a quiet, steady tone, rising from my seat. He looked momentarily surprised, like he'd expected a breakdown. Maybe tears, a scene, perhaps even a plea. But once you've rebuilt your life from the ground up before, you learn how to walk away with your head held high, even when it feels like your chest is caving in. I didn't ask why my name hadn't been mentioned once during that meeting. I already knew. 2 weeks earlier, I'd wrapped the final version of the Falkner proposal, a massive, intricate plan that took months of number crunching, risk analyses, and sleepless nights. Yet the day before the pitch, I spotted the final document on his desk, without my name anywhere. "Don't sweat it, Claire," he'd said then, as if it were a minor detail. "It's how these things go. You'll get internal credit." I should have fought back. I didn't. And now I was being led out by a stranger from HR, my access revoked before I even reached the elevator. My key card didn't beep. My inbox? Locked. Sitting in my car in the freezing parking garage, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I wasn't just angry. I was gutted. Not simply for losing the job, though that was a blow, but for letting myself be played, for seeing it coming and still handing him everything I had. As sleep blurred the windshield on my drive home, I thought about Ellie, about rent, tuition, the braces she still needed, about the countless nights she ate dinner alone while I finished just one more thing. And I thought about the time my boss told me, "You don't have that killer instinct, Claire. That's what's holding you back." He was wrong, and I was about to prove it. That night, while the city froze outside, I opened my personal laptop. In my cloud backup, I'd stored every version of the Falkner proposal, every draft, every note, every sketch with my name and timestamps. I didn't save it all for leverage. I just believed in backing up my work. What neither of us realized was that Sophia Lynn, the CEO of Falkner Industries, was an old client of mine from her startup days. She once told me, "Claire, if you ever need a real shot, call me. The builders deserve more than the sellers." I never made that call, until now. Her name sat at the top of my contacts list like a reminder. I clicked compose. Subject, the real author of your proposal. I typed, "Sophia, I hope this finds you well. You might not remember me, but we worked together during your Series B round years ago. I'm reaching out because I've recently left Carson Blake, and there's something you should know about the Falkner proposal." My fingers hovered over send. I didn't know it then. But that single email would ignite a chain reaction that would shake the very foundations of Carson Blake. And by the end of the week, I'd be sitting across from my old boss, not as his employee, but as his client. My hands trembled as I clicked send, not from fear, but from adrenaline. This was the rush of standing up after being knocked down too many times. That night I lay awake, listening to Ellie's soft breathing from the next room, wondering what tomorrow would bring. At 7:02 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Sophia. Sophia's message read, "Claire, of course I remember you. I still use the growth model you developed for our Series B. Thank you for reaching out. Let's talk. I have some questions, and perhaps an opportunity you might be interested in." I nearly spilled my coffee. Sophia Lynn wasn't just any CEO, she was a powerhouse in the tech industry, respected for her sharp intellect, integrity, and fearless leadership. If she wanted to talk, this wasn't just a polite reply. Her assistant put me through that afternoon. The call connected almost immediately. "Claire," she began, her tone calm but firm. "I've reviewed the documents you sent over." I held my breath. "I'm furious," she said plainly. "I thought you should know." I started, my voice steadier than I expected. "The proposal wasn't created by the person who presented it to you. It was my work." "Of course it was," she replied, her voice crisp. "I recognized the structure immediately. It had your fingerprints all over it." She asked pointed questions about the data modeling, risk mitigation strategies, market projections. I answered each one without hesitation, not because I'd rehearsed, but because it was my work. Every detail, every layer was mine. Finally, she said, "Claire, I'm terminating the contract with Carson Blake, effective immediately." My heart stuttered. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I don't do business with liars, and I certainly won't reward theft. But," she paused, her voice softening, "I won't let your work go to waste either. We still need that strategy implemented. I'm preparing to launch a new division. I want you to lead it, as a partner and as CEO." I blinked, stunned. "Me? Yes, you. You've always had the vision, Claire. You just never had the space to lead. I can give you that. But I'll need your decision quickly. We've got a lot to build." I sat in stunned silence, heart racing. "I'll think about it," I said, though deep down my answer was already a resounding yes. "Take your time, but not too long," she added. "You deserve to be more than a footnote in someone else's story." We ended the call and I sat there for a long moment staring at my phone. Me, a CEO. I thought about the nights I stayed up till 2 a.m., the forgotten birthdays, the times I was told I wasn't leadership material. This was the chance I'd been waiting for. That night, I finally told Ellie everything. She sat cross-legged on my bed, wrapped in her oversized hoodie, her hair a messy halo around her face. "They fired you?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and anger. "But you're the hardest worker I know." "I know, sweetheart," I said, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "But it's okay. Something better might be waiting for us." Her face was serious, the kind of serious only a 13-year-old who's had to grow up too quickly can wear. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. "Yes," I admitted, "but I'm also ready." The very next morning I called Sophia back. My voice was steady. "I'm in," I said. "Excellent," she replied without missing a beat. "Your title is CEO of Lynn Harper Consulting. The paperwork is already in motion." By mid-afternoon, the headlines began to surface. Falkner Industries severs ties with Carson Blake, citing leadership concerns. Insider sources whispered that the firm had been blindsided. I could practically see the look on Matt's face when he read the news. But this was just the start. The following day, his assistant tried to arrange a meeting with Falkner to salvage the deal. Instead of a polite decline, Sophia forwarded the email to me with a simple note. "He wants to speak to the CEO. Your move." So, when the call finally came through, and Matt's voice, now shaky and breathless, echoed across the line, I sat up straight, shoulders back. "This is Claire Harper," I said, voice cool and measured. "You're speaking with the new CEO of Lynn Harper Consulting." Silence, the kind that hums in your ears. Finally, he spoke, his voice strained. "Claire, I didn't expect to hear from you." "I'm sure you didn't," I replied, keeping my tone even. "You were hoping to reach the CEO of Lynn Harper. That's me now." He let out a thin, awkward chuckle, the kind that drips with panic. "Look, Claire, this must all be a misunderstanding. I wasn't aware there was an issue with you and Carson Blake. If I had known you were still involved, I would have handled things differently." I cut him off, letting the silence stretch a beat longer than comfortable. "You didn't know?" I said, my voice slow, deliberate. You stripped my name from the Falkner proposal. You presented my work as your own. Then you fired me 2 days later. But you didn't know? His tone sharpened, turning defensive. I was under pressure. The board wanted budget cuts. I had to make tough calls. You know how this business works, Claire, and frankly, you were always a solid analyst. But let's be honest, you were never leadership material. That one stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because I believed him, but because it was the same tired refrain I'd heard for years. Too quiet, too methodical, too much, and yet somehow never enough. You made a mistake, Claire, he continued, his voice tight. And I'm not just talking about walking away. You're burning bridges you may need down the line. Think about your career. Think about your daughter. That's when I felt it. A shift, a break in the dam. He had crossed a line. You don't get to bring my daughter into this, I said, my voice cold, calm, dangerous. And I'm not burning bridges. I'm building my own. There was a long, heavy pause, followed by a sigh. You know, he muttered, you used to be grateful. Grateful. The word tasted bitter on my tongue, as if every long night, every innovation, every strategy had been a favor handed down to me. I was never grateful for being exploited, I replied, voice firm. I was loyal. That ended the day you decided I was disposable. I'm not the one who needs to worry about the future here. You are. I ended the call. That same afternoon, I met Sophia in her office, an airy, modern space filled with light and energy. You handled that perfectly, she said after I told her about the conversation. But be ready. People like him don't go down quietly. She was right. By Thursday, the spin machine roared to life. First on LinkedIn, then through whispered rumors. The new narrative? That I had left Carson & Blake voluntarily. That I'd been bitter, unstable, too hard to manage. It was textbook deflection. But I was ready. I spent that day combing through my records, old emails, project logs, performance reviews, 5 years of documentation, every detail, every decision. Not because I'd planned for this, but because I was the kind of person who kept receipts. That evening, I received a quiet message from Julia, a former teammate. Claire, I don't know if you've seen what they're saying, but I want you to know. I've got your back. We all know the truth. And if you ever need a witness, I'm in. She wasn't the only one. Over the next 48 hours, messages trickled in, then flooded. Former colleagues, junior analysts, even people still inside the firm. Credit stolen, promotions denied, voices silenced. One by one, they shared their stories. Some were too scared to speak publicly. Others were quietly preparing to leave. You were the first to walk away, Julia said. But now that you have, some of us are ready to follow. By week's end, I had more than just support. I had evidence, screenshots, emails, internal memos, pieces of a pattern, a story of manipulation and misconduct that was bigger than just me. And the best part? I didn't even need to use it. Because the board of Carson & Blake was already getting nervous. By Monday morning, a notice quietly appeared on Carson & Blake's investor page. The Falkner contract had been officially terminated. Revenue projections were revised downward. Stock prices fell 6% before noon. And then, out of nowhere, I received the email I hadn't expected. Claire, this is confidential, but the board is launching an internal review. Multiple partners have voiced concerns over leadership conduct, especially in handling the Falkner account. There's talk of a leadership shakeup. You didn't just walk away, Claire. You exposed something we've all been ignoring. Anonymous. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over, my heart pounding. The very same firm that told me I wasn't cut out for leadership was now crumbling under the weight of the truth they tried to bury me with. By the following week, whispers had grown into headlines. Top consulting firm loses major client amid leadership scandal. Carson & Blake in crisis after executive shakeup. I watched it unfold from my home office, my laptop screen lighting up with breaking news alerts, my phone buzzing nonstop. Each new headline wasn't about revenge. It was about vindication. A quiet, fierce reminder that the truth always has a way of surfacing. At Lynn Harper Consulting, we were already building something new. Sophia and I handpicked a team, sharp, driven people. Some were former Carson and Blake employees who'd walked out after I did. Others were fresh talent Sophia had cultivated through her network. Each one of them brought not just skill, but a hunger for something different. A firm built on integrity, not exploitation. For the first time in years, I wasn't just executing someone else's strategy, I was designing the blueprint. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that Matt wouldn't give up quietly. And I was right. That Friday, my lawyer Dana called. Her tone was cool, but there was steel beneath it. "Claire, I've got news. You're not going to love it." "Hit me," I said, bracing for impact. Carson and Blake filed a cease and desist. They're claiming you used proprietary information from your time there to launch your own firm and poach their client. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was laughably predictable. "You mean the client whose contract I drafted, whose strategy I developed, and who I worked with years before I ever joined Carson and Blake?" "Exactly," Dana replied. "It's a scare tactic. They're trying to rattle you into backing down." "Well, let them try," I said, a calmness washing over me. "We have everything documented." "And we're not just playing defense," she added. "We're filing a countersuit: defamation, wrongful termination, professional misrepresentation. Plus, we've got statements from your former colleagues. 5 signed already, more on the way." I sat in stunned silence, the city skyline glowing in the fading light outside my window. A month ago, I was just trying to hold on to a job. Now, I was defending my name and taking back my narrative. The next surprise came from Nathan, a senior analyst I'd once mentored. His message popped up late that night. "Claire, I've kept quiet too long. We all knew what Matt was doing. You were the reason our strategies worked. He just took the credit. I've attached a timeline of project credits, where your name was erased or replaced. Use it if you need to." Then came Alicia, a former HR rep who'd left months before me. "Matt had your performance reviews altered. The quarter before you were fired, you were rated exceeds expectations. He changed it to meets expectations. They were laying the groundwork to push you out." Reading those messages, I felt the weight of it all. Even knowing what I knew, it still hit like a gut punch. Not because I believed the lies, but because they had been so meticulously crafted. They hadn't just used me, they'd tried to erase me. But now, piece by piece, I was taking it all back. Within days, Dana filed our response, complete with documented proof, email threads with Sophia, and those crucial statements from colleagues. The cease and desist was dropped within 48 hours. No apology, no explanation. Just silence. It was the loudest admission of guilt they could have given me. That week, Sophia and I presented our official launch deck to a room of potential investors. Our pitch was clear: a consulting firm built on integrity, led by women, focused on long-term vision, not short-term wins. The energy in the room was electric. By the end of the day, we'd secured 2 major contracts. As I stepped into the elevator, a wave of emotions crashed over me: pride, disbelief, and a quiet grief for all the years I'd spent waiting for permission to lead. I used to think the system was too big, too rigged, that the house always won. But the truth is, the house only stands because of the people who keep it running. And when they walk away, the whole damn thing shakes. That Friday evening, I picked Ellie up from school. She ran toward the car, her smile wide, eyes bright. "How was your day?" I asked as she buckled herself in. She turned to me, her face thoughtful. "My teacher asked who inspires us the most," she said quietly. "And I told her, you." I glanced over, my throat tightening. "Why me?" I asked softly. She shrugged, fiddling with her seatbelt. "Because you didn't let them stop you, and because you're the boss now." I smiled through the tears welling in my eyes. Not just because she saw me, but because for the first time, I truly saw myself too. Later that evening, as the sky turned shades of burnt orange and violet, I sat at my desk, staring at an email invitation from a Boston university. They wanted me to speak at their upcoming Women in Leadership Summit. The proposed topic: be the architect of your own power. I accepted. Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because someone had to say it. That the way things have always been, doesn't mean they have to stay that way. By the following month, Carson and Blake formally settled the case. The agreement included a confidential financial settlement, a public apology, and the resignation of 3 additional partners. But to me, the most important clause was what came next. They agreed to implement new employee protections, establish an independent ethics board, and release quarterly transparency reports. It wouldn't erase the damage, but it was a step toward change. And when they tried to slip in a non-disclosure clause to buy my silence, I refused. If they thought they could pay me off, they clearly hadn't been paying attention. I remained CEO of Lynn Harper Consulting, guiding us into our second year with a growing client base, a reputation for integrity, and a list of applicants eager to join. But more than that, I stayed visible, because stories like mine only matter when they're shared, when they remind others that their experiences aren't isolated, that silence isn't the price we pay for survival, that we get to decide when our story ends,